What is it that we're going to be doing today? So in a second, I'm going to ask who did not have the chance to do the homework assignment. And we may have to break down the class into a few groups that have not done, because then they need to get the work done. But I'm hoping that majority of you got a chance to do it, because we're going to be using that heavily today. So what is it that we're going to be doing today? What is it? Let's see here. Let's have a look. OK, so today we're going to start a little bit of content here about MVC. Hopefully, most of you had a chance to do the exercise and got to know a little bit about MVC. I really, really like the questions. The questions that you have submitted, they're going to be driving a lot of this class here today. OK, so again, you're going to see in a second that I'll be opening the questions, and I'll be going question by question by question. That will be the main, most of the time today that you're going to be doing. So, introduction to MVC. Actually, this deck of slides is very short. You're going to define what MVC is, and you're going to jump into the questions that you have submitted for the part invites. Let me tell you, I may not have made this clear in the first class, but I work with methodology a little bit different. I work with something called flipped classroom. Who knows what flipped classroom is? Anyone? Flipped classroom is a way of coordinating the studies, the classes, that you do upfront work, like what you did for this class. You had to do 3 videos with the exercise that goes together with those videos. Then you come ready to class with questions and with some prior knowledge, okay? And then in class, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be going through your doubts, your questions. I'll be exploring some of the concepts. I'll be, in a way, trying to tie together the loose ends that after you did the exercise, you had, okay? So that's what flipped class is. Let's talk a little bit about MVC here. So a definition of MVC, model, view, controller. MVC is an application design model. It's an approach to development, okay? And C#, .NET Core, they bring a lot ready for you to use out of the box. But it's an approach to development, not only to web development, but to any kind of development that is comprised of 3 interconnected parts. They include the model, which is the data, the view, which is the user interface. In our case, our user interface is what? What is our user interface? What is our UI? Is it building what? It's web. It's using what? HTML, CSS, a bit of JavaScript. C#, it's more in the back-end side. So again, data, we have the view, and then we have the controller, which controls the input and does some other stuff as well. But in short, this is what MVC is. Who remembers that? Who's tired of that? Well, we're going to be a lot more tired, because we're going to expand this a little bit. So this is a diagram that we have been working throughout last class, okay? I'll be showing yet another diagram based on this one here that you're going to be seeing a lot of times throughout the semester, the entire semester. So again, this is the basic flow of information in a web environment. What we're going to be focused, that I said last class, is on the web application side of it. So I'm going to expand that. I'm going to keep the other elements. They're going to just decrease here in size, and I'm going to expand this element here, and I'm going to give you an overview. One thing to keep in mind, the This class, actually this class in particular, is all about giving you an overview of MVC. Am I going to leave today here knowing everything about MVC? No. But you're going to have a lot of information. You're going to have had a chance to practice that as you have started already. We're going to continue here. But this is an overview. We're going to go through an entire application, very simple one, but an entire application from start to finish, so you can have an idea of what MVC is all about. You can see from start to finish. Instead of going, let's go deep in this little aspect of it, and then let's go deep. No, today it's really about, let's go in an overview from start to finish. Let's leave here having an application running with MVC and all the different components of MVC as well. Okay? So again, that's the objective here. Let's expand the web application here. So the same diagram, we still see there the client, there's a request, a response, the server here is a little bit smaller, but our web application slice has been expanded. Okay? This is our web application based on MVC. You're going to see this quite a lot throughout the course because everything that we're going to do the entire semester, it goes back to this diagram. We're going to be exploring as we go the first half of the semester. We're going to go through everything here in a slightly high-level way. The second half of the semester, we're going to go through each one of those elements in a more in-depth way. Okay? And today, we're going to go through all of them in a very superficial way, but again, you're going to have a good first contact with MVC. Okay? Let me just go through this a little bit, and I will play this video in a second. It will show yet another perspective about MVC, but first I want to describe that myself. So, the client will request one of the web, let's say the main page of our application, of our web application. Here's the request, comes to the server. Now the server, we have IIS here. Who can tell me what IIS is?
Microsoft Web Server.
Microsoft Web Server. It is. It's the Microsoft Web Server. It's the application that runs on the server that will receive requests. We're going to do the processing, and we're going to give the response back to it so it can send along the request. So it's a middleman application there that will communicate between our application and the client on the other side. It runs here on the server, and it's, again, just a layer there that will allow us to connect with the client and the client's requests and the response that we give back. So again, it's the web server application, okay, that runs on the server. We're going to be using something called IIS Express. I think it's Express. It comes with Visual Studio. So when you run your application, an instance of this, a smaller version of this application runs, and then you are able to see the web pages. Okay? You're gonna get more familiarized with that. So we have the request, number one here. The request goes to IIS. IIS sends the request to the web application. The web application receives this request. If we are talking about an MVC application, we have a component called the router. The router is the one that receives the request. It will understand who's the controller, what is the action. Actually, let me step back. It will understand who is the controller. It sends the request to the controller together with the action, and you're going to see those parts moving as well. The controller will get that request, and it may request data from a database. It may request data from a model. So when you see model, we're talking about data here. We're talking about a student class, an account, or a collection of students, or a repository that will read information from a database. This is all within this component of our MVC. So when you're talking about classes, we're talking about the model. Okay, model, again, when you hear the word model, you can think of a class, okay? A class as we are used to, like a student class, an account class, a bank account class, whatever class we are creating for our application, okay? So it's part of the model. So receives a request, the controller may interact with the model, maybe to retrieve information, maybe to save information. Maybe information will come from here, we'll go to the model will connect with a database, and it will save to a database. But let's talk about something simple. We go to a student view in our application system, and we are looking at the student data there. So there comes a request, requesting the information of one student number 300. So controller will ask the model give me student 300. The model will return the data for that student back here. Once controller has the data, it will send this data to the view. View is the one responsible to put together the HTML together with the data. So again, I have now controller, after this, controller has the data of student 300. First name, last name, everything. With this data, controller will send that model, the student model, to the view. And it'll say, view, here's the student data, build a view for me. Build an interface for me. The view will receive the model, will build up the HTML that is required to display the student information. That HTML comes back to the controller. Then the controller sends back to IIS. Then IIS sends back to the client. That is, in a nutshell, the life cycle of what you're going to be doing. As I said last time, a request and a response. We receive a request, we process the request here, and we come back and we return a response to the client. Okay? Any questions? Then we're still talking very high level here. It might be a bit overwhelming the first time that you see this diagram, but again, you're going to see this so much that you're going to know this by heart. I'm quite sure I'll get tired of it, at very least. Let's have a look at this video here. Oh, by the way, let me open, I'm going to open Padlet. Actually, it's already open. So again, as usual, if you have questions as we go along, and by the way, there will not be too much lecturing here. Just be mindful about that. But you can go to that one, padlet.com/Anderson/008. And again, you can ask me questions there as well. Let's have a look at that video.
20 years, websites have gone from simple HTML pages with a bit of CSS to incredibly complex applications with thousands from simple HTML.
Is it okay? The volume? Fine. I mean, if it's too loud, let me know.
HTML pages with a bit of CSS. Over the last 20 years, websites have gone from simple HTML pages with a bit of CSS to incredibly complex applications with thousands of developers working on them. To make working with these complex web applications much easier, developers use different patterns to lay out their projects to make the code less complex and easier to work with. By far the most popular of these patterns is MVC, also known as Model View Controller. The goal of this pattern is to split a large application into specific sections that all have their own purpose. To illustrate each section, let's look at an example where a user is requesting a specific page from a server. Based on what URL the user is requesting, the server will send all the request information to a specific controller. This controller is responsible for handling the entire request from the client and will tell the rest of the server what to do with the request. It acts as a middleman between the other two sections, model and view, and should not contain very much code. The first thing that happens when a controller receives a request is it asks the model for information based on the request. The model is responsible for handling all of the data logic of a request. This means that the model interacts with the database and handles all validation, saving, updating, deleting, and etc. of the data. The controller should never directly interact with the data logic, It should only ever use the model to perform these interactions. This means that the controller never has to worry about how to handle the data that it sends and receives, and instead only needs to tell the model what to do and respond based on what the model returns. This also means the model never has to worry about handling user request and what to do on failure or success. All of that is handled by the controller, and the model only cares about interacting with the data. After the model sends its response back to the controller then needs to interact with the view to render the data to the user. The view is only concerned with how to present the information that the controller sends it. This means the view will be a template file that dynamically renders HTML based on the data the controller sends it. The view does not worry about how to handle the final presentation of the data, but instead only cares about how to present it. The view will send its final presentation back to the controller, and the controller will handle sending that presentation back to the user. The important thing to note about this design is that the model and view never interact with each other. Any interactions between the model and the view are done through the controller. Having the controller between the model and the view means that the presentation of data and the logic of data are completely separated, which makes creating complex applications much easier. This is all just theoretical though, so let's look at an example of how this design handles a request. Imagine a user sends a request to a server to get a list of cats. The server would send that request to the controller that handles cats. That controller would then ask the model that handles cats to return a list of all cats. The model would query the database for a list of all cats and then return that list back to the controller. If the response back from the model was successful, then the controller would ask the view associated with cats to return a presentation of the list of cats. This view would take the list of cats from the controller and render the list into HTML that could be used by the browser. The controller would then take that presentation and return it back to the user, thus ending the request. If earlier the model returned an error instead of a list of cats, the controller would handle that error by asking the view that handles errors to render a presentation for that error. That error presentation would then be returned to the user instead of the cat list presentation. As we can see from that example, the model handles all of the data, the view handles all of the presentation, and the controller just tells the model and view what to do. And that's all there is to the basic architecture of MVC. In the next video, we're going to be doing all the basic.
Okay, so just want to reconnect to a few things he has mentioned here. Again, we're talking about one of the key aspects of object-oriented programming as well, which is separation of concerns. We have data here completely separate from the way it's presented. And the way it's presented is completely separated from how it gets the data. So you have a clear separation of how to get the data and how to present the data. And here you can think of a controller as most of what you would call traditionally your business logic, your heavy coding will be around here in the controller, okay? But more about that as we go along. Any questions?
Previous picture, there was water.
Yeah, you see, you're gonna, if you query for MVC C# diagram, each one will bring a slightly different take to the whole thing. Here, that route is right. It's still here. It's just that he did not mention for whatever reason. But it's very, very rarely you're going to see an exact reproduction of that diagram. So I'm putting the diagram that I think in my head represents the best way to describe MVC. Now again, different people will shorten things like this guy here. He is not mentioning here about the route because actually what is mentioned here is something more generic that is not specific to C#. So different languages will have a slightly different implementation of MVC, but it's still here. So it's still present right here, that routing mechanism. Okay? Who's confused? We're going to see in a second. Okay. Great. So here's what we're going to do now. I'm going to open the questions. I'm going to go question by question. I've renamed the file, so your name is not there, your student ID is not there, but I'm going to open them. And I'm going to go through them. Now, who was not able, for whatever reason, to do the exercise? Because here's what you're going to do. If you're not able to do the video 1, 2, 3 exercise, you're going to group together with whoever was not able to do that either, and you're going to do that now. While the rest of the class that has done the exercise, then we're going to pay attention here to the questions. I'm going to go question by question. I'm going to address question by question here until we are done. So, who did not finish the exercise? Okay, great. So what I would recommend is that it's just the two of you. See? You get together as a little group there. You work together. Maybe get closer. Maybe if there is a spot there, great. If not, there is an entire row here that you guys can work together. Okay, so again, you can progress on the 3 videos the way on your own pace. After I'm done with the questions, I'll be walking around, and you are able to ask me questions. If you want to pay attention here, that's fine, but here's the thing. If you have not done the exercise, you're not going to be able to relate to the questions too much because, again, you have not gone through it, so they may not make sense to you, okay? So, again, get together. I'm going to go through the exercise. Sorry, I'm going to go through the questions, and at some point, hopefully, you will be done with exercise with the first 3 videos, and the rest of the group will continue as well with the final 3 videos of the last part of the collection. So, does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. So again, I'll leave it up to you guys to figure out. You can sit together, but hopefully one will help the other. Okay. So, submitted questions. There are a few questions that I was not able to download yet, just because they were submitted after, I think after 2 o'clock. And so again, I was only able to download the ones that were submitted up to 2 p.m. But as we go through, I'll have a chance to download the other ones depending on time. But in terms of timing, my goal is this. We're going to take, again, depending on how those questions, because to be quite honest, I didn't look at each one of them. But depending how we're going to move with them, hopefully by 8:20, 8:30, we are done with the questions, and then you're going to continue the other 3 videos, and I'll be in small groups of 2 to 3 people, and I'll be walking around, I'll be helping you, I'll be assisting as you go along, okay? Let's start with the questions. By the way, before that, any questions? Okay? Okay, that's fine. So I'm going to open the questions, and you're going to go through them. Okay, let's see here. So bonus 2. Okay. If by any chance I open your questions and you still have more questions and you don't want to ask, that's fine. You can just use Padlet. I'll keep it open here. I'll also open Visual Studio because most likely okay, could you post the URL to the MVC video? Okay, no problem. So the URL to the MVC video is this one here. So if you go to your course shell, go to content, and then under content, go to week 1. Week 1, you're going to see the entire playlist here, down here. I'm going to paste it there anyway, but let me just go to YouTube. So here is the URL, just in case. Okay, so there you go, the URL. But again, you can see that under Centennial. Okay, so I'm going to open Visual Studio. You can find it. And let's go to the questions here. Okay, so why the use of the question mark after the Boolean keyword guess response model class. Okay. Okay, let's see. I'm going to open my solution file, okay, and I'm going to go through the questions, and as we go along, hopefully this will be what you meant by this. So I'm going to open. Okay, so I'm going to open the version up to video number 3. So I'm assuming that this is talking about the model guess response. Is it class or the model? Yeah, because if I'm correct, I think that this is the only place that we have this question mark is in this Boolean. Okay, so if this is not the right place, again, let me know if you have a follow-up question. But who can tell me what that question mark is?
Ternary operator.
Is it a?
Ternary operator.
What does it do?
It gives you two choices.
Actually, let me stop you right there. We're going to talk about ternary expression. It's not that one. The ternary, it has a question mark in a column. That's the condition that you have. If this is true, then this. Otherwise, then do that. This is close to that, but it's not right that.
Because it can be nullable.
It can be nullable. So if you have just bool, the value of will attend cannot be null. It's either true or false. However, when you put a question mark after the type, you can make it nullable. Now, if we are talking about objects, objects by the nature of objects, they can be nullable. But because bool is a primitive one, a primitive type, for a primitive type to be able to be nullable, we have to use the question mark at the end. Why am I doing that there? Why are we doing that there? Because when we hook up this field to the UI, then we're going to be able to validate and say, hey, you didn't set a well-attend, the well-attend Dropbox. So, because well-attend is a Dropbox that has please select for null, yes, and no. If we don't put it there, it won't work. It won't allow you to have a null value for that particular field, okay? Again, for whoever asked that, hopefully that worked. If not, you can ask verbally. If not, you can also ask here, okay? Let's see. Say I couldn't finish the bonus without the arrows, okay, but almost finished. Is that right? Should finish. Okay, so if you had errors during your coding, maybe pay attention here. Pay attention here because after we are done with the questions, I'll be walking around as we progress to the next set, and I can work with you one-on-one to help you sort out the problems that you're having. And yeah, I think that's the best way, okay? So pay attention here. If you barely started, maybe you want to continue. However, if you try hard and try to, went beyond video 2 to video 3, again, pay attention here, and I'll give you a hand after we're done with the questions, okay? Okay, so next one here. Why, actually, let me increase this font here. Okay, so why the use of underscore in front of view imports? So view imports, let's have a look here. Have a look at views, view imports. So from what you were able to gather about this application in view imports, who can give me a rough idea of what view imports is? This little file here.
It's an import. There's going to be deployed for the other pages as well.
That's correct. That's correct. So again, this view import is right underneath, is sitting right below the views folder. So every single view present under this views folder will import this content here automatically. So we write it once, and we don't need to write that again to each and every view. So whatever we write here, it gets embedded automatically on each and every single view under this folder. Okay? So again, this is the same level of this home folder. Every view inside of this home folder will import this. Now the question is, why the underscore? Well, here's the thing. MVC, C#, .NET Core, there are a whole bunch of standards, of naming conventions. So this is yet one more naming convention. You have to understand that I have to use this name so it can be imported automatically. If I change for another name, it won't work. Again, you're going to see this quite a lot in MVC. We have a views folder. It has to be called views home folder. Why is it called home folder? Well, because we have a home controller. Under views, it has to match the name of the controller. So again, yet another standard. So you're going to see a lot of standards, a lot of things that, why is it this name? Well, because the framework is requiring you to use this name so it can import automatically. See, MVC, it prioritizes standards as opposed to configuration. So you can just say, yes, but why is that they don't have a file that I can say, oh, import all of this, oh, do this, do that. Actually, instead of having configurations, a bunch of configuration, it works mostly with definitions, with standards. So again, the naming is yet one more part of that set of standards that we're going to be using when we're dealing with MVC. Hopefully that makes sense. Questions? Okay, let's see here. Okay, so the last one here. How does ASP.NET know where to find each view, and must I declare a home directory or any other directories inside views? I think I just covered that. So as I said, there are a lot of standards. One of those is if I have a controller, controllers, they have a certain standards. They have a name followed by the keyword controller. If I'm going to have a controller called admin controller, the views that are part of admin controller, they're going to be under a views admin folder. Because this name here, it has to match the name of the controller without the controller keyword. Again, it's yet another standard. Okay, so those views here, I know that they are going to be used by the home controller because they are under the home folder, under the views folder. Okay, one thing to make it clear is that these are not pages, okay? These are called views. So we don't access them directly in the URL. And there are some questions about that. What we access in the URL is we tell in the URL what is the controller, and inside the controller, we tell which action we are accessing. So by default, initially you're going to think about how are we accessing controllers and actions via the URL. Whatever is in the URL, it will tell me what is the controller, what is the action that is being called. Now, when you hear the word action, you can replace that with methods, because this is a method. This is a method of this class, okay? But in terms of MVC, we call it the class controller, and we call this the action, okay? So we have controllers and actions, okay? Let me run this application. I'll just mention one thing quickly here. Okay, so what is the URL there? I don't see anything here defining this URL. I don't see anything here. Because we are dealing with the default URL. A URL like that, it has a default controller and a default action. How does it know that it needs to bring this view? This is the, if we have a look, this is the index view called by the index action. But how does it know that? How does it know that it has to call this controller here in this section? Why not this one? Well, because again, we're going to talk about yet another standard here. By default, the default controller is the home controller. By default, the default action is the index action. Where is that defined? How can I change that? First of all, you can change that. I'm not going to see that right now. I'm going to see that later. We are using the default, the out-of-the-box structure, but that's what you need to understand at this point. The default controller is the home controller. The default action is the index action. Okay? This is defined, just so you know, by this line. This little line is use MVC with default routes. Default routes, default controller, default index. Okay? Again, I think that's enough for that question there. I went way above and beyond. Any follow-ups on that one? Let's see if there's any questions there. Okay. One down, 10 to go. There are quite a few questions that are more or less the same. But, okay, great question there. Is ASP.NET Core 2.0 okay to use? Actually, the video is not changing that. It's not changing the framework, but we should actually be using that. I need to modify the video because we should be using 2.1, not 2.0 like the video is showing. The video is not, I'm not changing there in the video the framework. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about this. See, when we go to new project, and then we select ASP.NET Core, I'm just going to leave it as is, because this is just a test. We should actually be using 2.1 here, not 2.0. I had a lot of problems with last semester of students that selected 2.0, and we got a bunch of problems later on down the road. So select this one. If you have done the exercise with 2.0, that's fine. At the end of this exercise, I'm going to provide you the files, the final files for this project. So the final ones that I'm going to provide will be already set to 2.1. But again, keep that in mind. Going forward, we're going to be using 2.1 on all our projects here. Why not 2.2? To be quite honest, I didn't want to deviate yet from 2.1 to 2.2 because I was concerned that maybe certain aspects would be slightly different. Again, not much has changed from one to the next one. Most like some minor improvements. But again, the concepts, the flow, the structure is very much the same. So we are okay by using 2.1. I hope that answers that question. Let's see here. What is MVC? Found an answer, okay, great. We have covered that. Some follow-up questions. Let's see. Is it applicable to other applications as well? What are the common, okay, follow-up questions. Is this applicable to other applications as well? By applications, I'm going to read that as by other languages. So is the same structure applicable to others? Yes, it is. However, can you I would say, translate line by line? No, you cannot. You can have that general understanding that we have MVC, model, view, controller, but to move from, let's say, C# to PHP to Ruby, you're going to have to know the syntax that has to be, not so much about the syntax, but which classes, which components, which objects are being used by that framework, by that language. The high-level structure is the same. But of course, the details, you use this line of code, there, what you're going to be using, or going to be using something else. They will be changed, but from a high level, from an overall architecture standpoint, it's the same. What are the common keyboard shortcuts that you were using in this video? Actually, I don't use too many shortcuts. It's just the Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V that I was really using. Yeah, I guess that might be confusing, because what I do quite a lot there during the video is I'm copying certain snippets of code from another document into the code, okay? So it's not a shortcut, it's really copy and paste, okay? Now, again, if you are crazy about shortcuts, there are plenty of ones to learn in Visual Studio, but I'm not the one to ask about that, because I'm not big with those shortcuts. Would you mind if we post it on GitHub for source control? I don't. Now, if we are talking about assignments, you should post that on Centennial, because if you post that on GitHub, I mean, somebody else might be able to copy that from you, okay? So, yeah, I mean, nothing wrong with using GitHub if you want to share something with me. But again, for assignments, I would recommend not doing that. Okay? But yeah, I mean, exercise, that's fine. No problem. Okay? Okay. Let's see here. Okay. Okay, so what is Razor syntax and what is its mission? Well, let's see. Anyone has an answer for that? What is Razor syntax?
It's kind of the way we have like oh my god, I forgot we have JavaScript and the jQuery.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a jQuery, but to connect with C# applications.
That's an interesting comparison. Razor is
Kind of a notation.
it's called an engine. It's a view engine. It's very similar to C#, but there are some specific things like the @ symbol, and we're gonna be digging into Razor as we go along, okay? But basically, it's how you can code very similar to C#, but embedded into the HTML. So we're not going to be covering this during the course, but there are others. There are other view engines. Razor is the one that is default by Microsoft, built by Microsoft, but there are other engines that we can code inside of our HTML. Okay, so Razor. It has a special syntax because it's built. We code with Razor inside of HTML. Sometimes it gets confusing because there are certain aspects of it that, again, becomes a little bit confusing, but as we go along, we're going to get more familiarized with that. In terms of mission, well, it's really there to bring capabilities of mixing HTML with code, that we can produce a more code-rich interface. We can code. Now, we're not going to do complex coding in our views. complexity is supposed to be handled within the controller. Views are just for displaying data. So if we are doing something very complex in our views, most likely we're doing something wrong there. Okay? But more about that as we go along. Can a method return another method? Yes, it can. So if we're talking about actions here, an action can call another action. It's not a problem. Okay? Yes, that's the full action. Why? Okay, this is a good question here. Why we use IEnumerable instead of list? I know list inherits from IEnumerable. Why we don't use specific class rather than the general one? Actually, this is not a very simple question to answer, but I'm going to give it a good try here. Actually, before I go there, 5 minutes. We'll come back. Just let's have a break of 5 minutes. And we'll be back in a second. Okay, soon. How are you doing? It's going fine?
Yeah.
Yeah. How are you doing?
Why I just the hand job was just I almost finished it. I already submitted it, but just some few errors.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
You want to show me any one of them?
Oh yeah, the button is not so big.
Oh, I see. The button is not showing up properly.
And firstly, I couldn't.
So you are doing so. Yeah, got it. Okay. Yeah. So let's see the button. Let's go back there.
Yep.
Okay, back again. Can you right click in the button? Just right click and go to inspect. Inspect or yeah, I mean. Yeah, it's. Yeah, there is a. Go back there. Go back there. Again, I don't know. I think it's called inspect. I don't know.
Looking source. You mean? Looking
yeah, try looking. No, but it's not looking source. We have to inspect. It's inspect. I'll show you where it is.
Oh yeah.
Okay? You can just, I'll just bring it up to the screen. See, if you right click, see, inspect, the last one. Okay, so let's have a look there. Okay. It's missing BTN here. So double click inside, double click, but it just BTN. I know there's one BTN, but there's another BTN before that. So, but BTN space, BTN primary.
BTN space.
BTN again? No. No. Okay, so BTN space, BTN dash enter. See? So this didn't change there, but you need to copy this one here to your codes. Okay? Okay? Make sense? Just the bootstrap classes.
Yeah.
That's it. Minor thing.
Then I think I completed the exercise.
Okay.
Already. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Awesome. Yes. Sure.
When I try to multiply, it doesn't change like the function.
Okay.
Or run, like
It didn't change, correct? Let me see here. Okay, scroll down. Scroll down here. Go to the imports. There's something, because did you just change this now, or it was already like this before?
no.
You just changed it now?
Yeah, no, that was before.
It was before?
Yeah, follow the videos.
Yeah, because sometimes view should takes a little bit. View. There might be some misspelling here because this should be enough to make it
Yes.
show.
Yes, make it sure.
Indexes here, few imports. There might be something. I'm gonna bring that up.
Okay.
Make sure that it looks exactly the same. Exactly the same, because sometimes it's a minor, it's a capital. It is exactly the same. So I'll come back once we are done with the questions. I'll come back and I'll sit with you, and we're gonna figure this out. Wow. Okay. Yep.
Apparently, I cannot run.
Okay, so can you close that? Okay, let's go to right-click the project. The project name, part invites. Right-click, go to properties, go to debug, scroll down, disable SSL. Let's have a look. Save it and give it a try. Okay, let me know if it works. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, no problem. Okay, so let's carry on here. So we are going to this question here, okay. Why is IEnumerable being used instead of IList? So let me just step back for a second and recap, because this is usually covered on comp123. Let me just recap a little bit of what is IEnumerable and what is the list here. So let's just have a look at this picture that I have here. What is this? Where is this? Where is that? See here if it's week 1. I swear that I had an image here ready for this point. Okay, I'm just going to mention verbally that. So, IEnumerable is what? Just by the name of it, what is IEnumerable? What can you infer about IEnumerable just by looking at its name? It's it's enumeration, but let's even go before the enumerable. We have an I there. It's an interface. Okay, so an IEnumerable is an interface. It's the most generic interface that we have. So list inherits from IEnumerable. Okay, and usually I recommend that it's best practice to declare variables and methods and anything as specific as possible. Then that's why the question, Ederson, why are we using IEnumerable? Why are you declaring like IEnumerable and not like just a regular list? Well, we could use a regular list. However, just want to bring this. I'm gonna do a minor modification here and then revert back. So let's have a look at our model. Again, our repository model here. Let's start there. So we have responses. Responses is a collection of guest responses. Okay? So it's been declared as a list. Now, I'm returning the responses here from this property because my responses is private. It is private because, remember, it's one of the principles of object-oriented programming that we keep data private in the objects. Could this be public? Yes, it could, but we would be breaking one of the basic aspects of OOP, which is making data private. And then we expose data via a property like this. So I know that there's one question somewhere that asks about that. So again, the reason why this is private is because we keep data, direct access to data private, and we expose via public properties. Now, the question still remains, why don't we make this list and list here? We could make. We would have to do a few adjustments, but we could make it. However, IEnumerable is already an interface that supports link and supports querying. And we're going to be using link. Who remembers what is link from comp123, or if you know what link is. What is link? It's a query language that is built into, it's a library. It's a library for querying data. IEnumerable is ready for that. It's ready out of the box. I can query responses directly. I can just say responses dot where or dot sort or dot order by. I can do that right away. With a list, we would have to do some conversions there. Okay. And here is, we could see. Let me just go here to the controller. I'm missing. Oh, yes. Because this will come afterwards. In a later video, we're going to be filtering the list of responses. So that's in a nutshell what I would like to mention about this question is, again, IEnumerable is already ready without conversion, ready to be used by link. And we don't have to convert to lists or anything. And again, we're going to be using IEnumerables quite a lot. When we are using lists, sometimes we use iQueryable as well, which is yet another type of collection. I hope it makes sense. If not, again, this will become more clear as we go along. Let's see if there's any follow-up there. Okay. Any questions? Okay, let's see here. Okay, so under here's a note I've taken while watching the video. It also includes other questions. If you want to, okay, so we have some other questions here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick to that so I can move on. If you are the owner of those questions, I can address more or less one-on-one with you, but I want to give a chance to the other questions to be asked as well. Okay. Okay, let's have a look there. What are the specific details and roles of controllers, models, views, portion of... Okay, so I hope that at this point this became a little bit more clear. If you still have that question, let me know and I'll address one-on-one. But hopefully the explanation at the beginning of those different components made sense to you and helped you to address this question. Why do views have .cs HTML extensions? What makes those different from just a normal HTML file? It's because they have Razor code on them. Okay? So it's just a way to differentiate the files from a regular HTML file. So again, you see there is there's code in there as well. Not only HTML, but it has Razor code on them as well. Okay. Okay, so again, feel free to ask me again. As somebody who comes from a React.js background, what are some similarities with using ASP.NET and MVC? What are some big libraries that are used in conjunction with MVC? For example, React has things like Redux, GraphQL, etc. Who can help me answering that question there? Let's break this down a little bit. Where is React.js? Let's think about the web application architecture. Where is React.js sitting on? On the client, okay? Where is MVC sitting on? On the server. So you can use React.js, Angular, whatever you want in the front end. You can use with MVC, with C#. It's up to you as a developer. So it's not that they are similar or different. It's that they are used for different purposes. React.js, as Angular, as jQuery, they are client-side. MVC, C#, it is a backend framework, a backend environment. So again, you can use with MVC, C#, .NET Core. You can use React.js, Angular, whatever you want in the front end. You can use in conjunction. They are not competing against each other. They can be used together, front end and back end. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Let's have a look here. Let's see if I can increase this. Okay, wouldn't it be possible to do some, if not all of this, using Microsoft Expressions or something similar? I have no idea what Microsoft Expressions is. I don't know. Because I just don't know what Microsoft Expressions are. Be honest. Again, we can talk one-on-one and you can tell me what Microsoft, I can Google Microsoft Expressions as well, but upfront, I don't know what that is. So I cannot answer that.
I don't know who asked, but Microsoft Expression, I think we used it in the first term.
Yep.
It's, for HTML. It's an application.
I have no, again, I've never used, I've never heard of.
From Microsoft to web development.
To web, from a front-end standpoint? Okay, so I guess that if it's a tool like that, I see no problem.
It's already abandoned it, so.
Okay, so I guess that we can abandon the question as well. Eventually, after this example, should we just start using the web application templates that Visual Studio gives? No. Yes, Visual Studio has templates, but no, we are not going to use them. Because you know what? We get used to Visual Studio doing everything for us. We actually have to practice this. Because we should only be using templates once we know what we are doing. Because when you get stuck with something that a template did, that you didn't understand, and you need to change, now all of a sudden you don't know how to do that. Because you never had the practice of understanding by not using a template. Templates are great once you know what you're doing, but not before you know what you're doing. Okay? And again, we are learning. And yes, at some point, I just want to speed this up. I just want to get this done. Yeah, so use a template. But again, once you know what you are doing, okay? Once you have experience with that. Any follow-up questions on that one? I think it's an important one and one that should not be overlooked, Okay? How does the datetime now hour figure out what it is? Does it use the computer's internal time or something else? Okay, who can answer that? We are using the datetime now hour. Where's this hour coming from? From in our case, if we are running that in our laptops, it's coming from our own local system. If we are running this in a server, it will pick up the day and time of the server. Okay? Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Okay. Okay. So, why do we not use Docker for this instance? Wouldn't it be more beneficial for us to run this in a Docker container that contains everything our application needs? No. Okay, so here's the thing. Again, we are understanding the building blocks of MVC here. Yeah, you could use Docker, but then maybe we would be missing some aspects of understanding this environment a lot better by using it straight out of without having everything plugged together. To be quite honest, I don't have much experience, by the way, in Docker, so I cannot speak proficiently about that. But what I can tell you is this. If you get to know how to use it the way we're working on, you're going to be able to use Docker to package things up and transfer that to other environments like, so again, I don't have much experience with Docker. I don't want to fake that I have experience with Docker. I don't. So I cannot speak too much about that. But if you know how to use Docker, I'm pretty sure that you can figure out how to package this and use that to your own benefit. But yeah, we're not using that here in our class. Where's the repository data stored? Is this stored on the client side or on the server side? What are the advantages of using a repository over a database? Okay, so let's break this down. Where is the repository data stored? In this application, if you have done just up to video 3, where are we storing the data? Where? Where is it? In the model. But the model is sitting where? Where is the model sitting? Again, let's think about data. Do we have a database there in our application? No, we don't have. We are storing the data where? In RAM, in memory. So we are storing the data in memory. Every time that we close the application, that list of guests will be gone. Okay? So for the sake of simplicity, because this is the first example that we do, we're not going to be using. We are not storing the data in the database. We're storing just in memory. Okay, so where's the repository data stored? Right now, just in memory, just in the RAM memory of your laptop of the server. Is it stored on the client side? No, it's not. Again, it's a server, and we're storing that in the repository. See, we have the repository class, which is a static class, and here we have the responses. So we are storing in this list right now. Okay? What are the advantages of using repository of database? Okay, so it's not that you're going to use one or the other one. You're going to use them both. Eventually, we're going to be saving the data in our database. So we're going to have a repository. A repository is a piece of code that will be in your application that will be responsible to communicate with the database, get all responses, change a response, delete a response. So they are not, it's not that it's one over the other, but they will be working together. You're going to need both of them. You're going to need a repository type of class in the application that will interact with the database. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay? Again, this first example, part invites, will not be using database. Okay. Next one, sports store, yes, we're going to be using, but not this one. Can you elaborate more on mapping views to models? Well, okay, so let's have a look at that. I'm just going to bring back this diagram here. So what happened really, and I'll show the code in a second, is that they don't interact directly. What happens is that the controller will make a request to a model. This model comes through the controller, and then the controller says, hey, view, take this data. Take this model here and do what you need to do to put this HTML together and give it back to me. So they don't interact directly, but let me show you here some code that I think it's relevant for us. I'll show you the view that has the form. It's part of the first 3 videos. See, we have this model here at the top because we are saying that this form, which is this HTML, it's going to be mapped to that model over there. Does it mean that they are connecting directly with each other? No, I'm just saying that this model is strongly typed because there is a type linked to this model, linked to this view, and that's the model. But the data is not there yet. We have to give the data. So the controller is the one that, just show you the controller here. Actually, if we're talking about the form initially, it does not get data, but it sends back data. Remember that we kept talking about get and post? Those are the two most common methods. Here, as you can see, we have a RSVP form, which is a post, and RSVP form, which is a get. The post is when I fill out the form, I click the submit button, it sends that information over to this action via this parameter here. How does it know that it can use that parameter? Because if we have a look at the form is saying, hey, I'm a form, but I'm linked to a guest response. So my fields in this form, they are mapping back to a guest response. So again, they don't connect directly, but I can say this form is expecting that model, that class, is expecting an object of that class, or it's going to produce, create, send it back to the action, an instance of a guest response. When we submit the form, when we click submit, we fill out the information, click submit, it sends a guest response object back to this action, which is a post action. It sends as a parameter here, you see? This parameter is coming from the model that is being declared at the top of this view. This is called a strongly typed view. It's a view that is connected. It's a view that's expecting that kind of object, okay? But again, don't get confused by, oh, is the view accessing directly the data? No. The data is accessed by the model, which provides to the controller, and then the controller sends the data to the view. Again, you're going to hear so much about this that this will become second nature. I hope that this clarifies a little bit to whoever asked the question. Let's see if there's an answer. Why not use? Okay, maybe you're still typing. I'll give you a second there. Okay, so again, hopefully this clarifies a little bit more, the mapping. Again, that's the only map that happens there is I can make a view strongly typed or not strongly typed. It can have a model up there, or maybe not. And you're going to see examples of that too. Let's see here. Why not use get and post on one method instead of creating two? Okay, so here's why. Because this one here, this method here, actually let me ask you this. When is this action performed? When is the first one performed? This one here. What happens for that one to be executed? When what happens? When enter the URL, we have the interface, we have a link that says, no, that's. Yep, so I'm just gonna run this here. So I'm gonna click that link there. See the URL? It changed to home ISVP form. This is a get. So that action in this controller are these here. This is the one, this is the get version. The post version, it has a parameter. The get doesn't have a parameter because I'm not sending anything to it. I'm just getting the page. I'm just getting the form, the empty form. I need the posts because when I fill out the information, I click submit, that data via something called model binding, that data automatically gets populated into a new guest response. It's magic. We don't have to do anything. It's called, again, model binding. We are binding what is in the view to a model. And it comes back as an object. See, we don't have to get field by field. It happened automatically for us. We don't have to say, get the name, get the email address, get the phone number. We don't have to say that because they have certain names. The names match the names of the properties in the guest response. And then, magically, it becomes a guest response. And we can then just add to that response. Okay, question? Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay. So what's wrong with this approach?
Because when you have a get, you don't have an input for your method. Like you can have an HTTP get with the guest response as input. Like you can.
Yeah, that's a good point. To be quite honest, I don't know if the syntax work. It may even work. I don't know. I'm not sure. Actually, here's the thing. If you want the same method, the same action or method to be used by get and post, just take them out. If you just take them out, it will be used by both get and post. Now, see what you are doing here, repository.add response. When we access the URL for the first time, there's no response yet. There is no res yet. And then are we adding already to the repository? We just access the page. We just got the page. There's no data. We're not sending data yet there. Okay? So, again, one is for when we just need to get the form HTML. And the second one is when we need to post back. Okay? So, again, even if the syntax works, but there's nothing here to add the response when you are just getting it. Okay? Again, you can ask a follow-up question if you have to. Okay? Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can you simply overload the method without having the header get and post?
You can overload.
Like the post
Yeah.
will run the method with the parameters.
Okay, no problem with overloading. I'm just trying to think here. How it would know Yeah, we could have a method without parameter, a method with parameter. I don't know. I really don't know how it would work. It might work. We can try. It's something interesting to try, to remove it, and then the posts could be sent to the one with parameter, now with expecting the parameter. I don't know. It may or may not work. I'm not sure. We would have to try. It's a good thing to give it a try, and it's easy to do. Okay, let's see here. So the class view result or the method's view, where it comes from. The class controller, since it's inherited, yes, it is. Actually, you're right there. You are correct. This, view result and HTTP header, HTTP post, HTTP get, they all come from the fact that we are inheriting from controller. This is made available, made viable via that inheritance there, which comes from this namespace. Okay, so controller comes from this namespace, and yes, view result comes from this namespace as well, and based on the controller. Okay. Okay. Let's have a look there again. Regardless whether we're going to finish the questions or not, by 8:20, which is our 10 minutes break, we're going to come back and we're going to progress on the rest of the videos. Oops. Okay. Is there any kind of security issues using MVC for the development unauthorized access to the code? Well, there are different ways that I could read that question. We're going to see at some point that we can apply security, users, roles, login to our application. Not right away, but we can do that eventually, okay? So that side is that. I mean, there will be a point in the course that we're going to be addressing that. We're going to be addressing security. However, unauthorized access to the codes. So here's the thing. The code, by code, I'm thinking about the C# code, the MVC codes that is sitting in the server. Is there issues for MVC unauthorized access to the code? You don't have access to the C# codes, to the Razor codes. Everything that comes back to the client will be just plain and simple HTML. So are there any security vulnerabilities that I'm aware of? I'm not aware of anyone in particular that is affecting MVC at this point. Go ahead.
Just a quick question on that note. Would you still be applying like something like regex to this if you were doing it that way?
If I
For security purposes, like for anything where somebody could enter a response, would you still be using something like regex to actually identify what's being inputted?
To avoid injection and things like that, you could still use that. However, I'm quite sure that MVC itself, the whole framework, already sanitizes the contents, but I'm not 100% on that. I don't know. It may or may not. I think it already handles that well, but I'm not 100% sure. Can I run ASP.NET application on a Linux server? Yes, you can. There is something called, let me see, there's a web server which works together with IIS, and I don't remember the name right now, but .NET Core runs on, I don't remember right now. Once I remember, I'll put it there. But there is a web server that runs on Windows, that runs on Linux, that runs on Unix, on a lot of different environments that will support the processing of .NET Core. That's one of the reasons why we have this new framework, this new platform from Microsoft, is to be able to run the application in different environments, not only Windows-based. Okay? Which is the most popular web environment today? What do you think? I don't know. I really don't know for sure. I can tell you this. You can get to a pretty much good idea. Let me show you. There is this website. Who knows about Stack Overflow? Castro, yes. Castro is the server. Castro is the web server that runs .NET Core, and IIS use Castro. Castro can be used on Linux as well. It has different versions, so it can run .NET Core on different OSs. Thank you for that. Okay, so what I was about to... Oh, Stack Overflow, yeah. Who knows what Stack Overflow is? Go ahead.
Website that all the developer can say information.
Yep. So you can have a question, you put the question there, someone may answer that for you. I'm gonna do this here. Stack Overflow 2019 survey. Every year, Stack Overflow is one of the biggest development forums, if you may call it like that, or networks that is out there for developers. So if you put, every year they have a survey that will survey the entire developer base of over, I think 80,000 people respond to that. So every year they put a survey, the survey results out. So on that one, you have pretty much, if you want to know what's hot right now, what's not, what's trending up, what's trending down, you can see it here. You can see countries, you can see salary, you can see technology, you see different roles. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at this here. What is that? JavaScript. See, most popular technologies. Again, this is pretty accurate, to be honest with you. I mean, I cannot give you any more accurate information than this one here. See, most popular technologies, JavaScript up there, and then again it goes like that. You see, we're not too low in the list here. We're doing fine. Okay, so but as I said, JavaScript is everywhere now. It's in the client, in the server. I mean, it used to be a second citizen, language. You don't really code in JavaScript a few years ago, but today it's a powerhouse. Anyway, I'll share the link here on our Padlet. And again, if you want, go for it. There is a lot of information here. Salary and what's trending up, the most hated, dreadful, most loved, most dreaded, and most wanted language. You see the loved ones, dreaded ones, and wanted ones. Again, a lot of data here, a lot of interesting information for you to dig if you want to, hey, I don't know which one I should focus, maybe have a look at this. But don't go 100% on what this is telling you. Go for your inclinations as well. Again, I hope that this helps a little bit answer that question. Would it be better to treat the errors in page with JavaScript instead of the server validation? That's a great question. Love that question. Let's read that. Let's interpret that. Would it be better to treat the errors in the page with JavaScript instead of the web server validation? Who can give me an answer for that?
I think it would, because you save
the trip.
every time, like having to connect to the server, wait for the
Response?
response.
Okay.
Like the validation of fields, I think it would be better to use JavaScript.
And right now, it's not using. Right now, what we have there is not using that. Okay, that's a good point. Anyone has a different opinion or want to add to that?
ignoring the errors, as opposed to where that's just on the client side, so only the client's going to see that unless it's actually sending cookies back.
Okay, so maybe server-side too. Actually, I would say the most appropriate answer is actually both. It should be done in both places. It should be done in the client side, the validation, field so-and-so is not filled up. First name is not filled up. It should be done in the client side, and it should be double-checked in the server side as well. Because here's the thing. We are dealing with a web browser right now. But maybe that same methods will be dealing, or the same method or action could be dealing with an application with a client that is not a web browser client. So for two reasons that should be done in both. One is for security as well. If we just rely on client-side validation, we are not protecting our application properly. So a second validation should be done in the server as well. Now, no question, the first level of validation should be in the front end, because then we save that trip. That's great. But again, it does not mean that we don't have, and you can think of as a redundant validation, a second validation. Well, you secure the application in the client side, you secure the application in the server side as well. So both of them. It's client side to save the trip, server side to protect the application, because maybe the client is not a browser, maybe the client is something else. So again, ideally both. And we're going to be using, it's fun, as soon as we add jQuery to the application, jQuery without us doing anything to the application, jQuery will do that validation for us. Just because of the tagging that goes in the markup, jQuery will automatically do a client-side validation for us without us doing anything. Okay? So great question. You should do both of them. Both of them. Okay, let's see here. Okay. Okay. Okay, so let's see. Whoops. It's too much. Okay. Okay, so I guess that this first one here is addressed. Used ASP action needed to follow with the form name and must specify the model. Okay, that's a okay, ASP action. I'm gonna try to read this. So use ASP action. Let's see where ASP action is being used, first of all. So let's go to the application. Actually, you tell me, where is this being used? Where is ASP action being used in the application? Yeah, exactly. So we have a few places that is using that. What the hell is this? Okay, so let's have a look at one of the views here. Index, yeah, so we have it here. So let me see again, what is the question? With the form name. Okay, so if it's the form, then we're talking about the form tag here. So we're talking about this. Okay, so the model name. Okay, so we don't have, the way I interpret what the question is we don't have to specify the model here in this tag, because we have already linked this form, actually this view, with the model. Where? Where did we do that? Where did you link this view to a model? Where was that? The very top. So the very top here, we are linking there. So again, I might be misreading the question, but we don't put the model here in the form tag. We link the view to the model with that first line there. Okay. Okay, so what is the difference between iNumber and list? I think that we covered that one. And let's see here. Okay, so when you created the form inside the body in the RSVP form, you used post method. You mentioned that it will send the info to the server, yes, but how will it send the info to the server? Well, again, it goes back to the fact that because of that, we have hooked up this view to that model over there. So this connection will make each one of those properties, so the input called name, the input called email, the input called phone, it will map back to the properties of the guest response because they match the name, you see? We have name, email, phone, will attend, they match. So when you click submit, a new instance of this object, of this class, gets created, and the fields get populated. What is this called? This is called model binding. It's automatically happening for us. Okay? So I hope that addressed the question. Let me see, there's a follow-up there. Can you link more than one model to a view? Okay. No, you cannot. You cannot. Now, here's what you can do. If you have a very complex view, which may happen, you may choose that instead of using one of the, I will call it basic models, like guest response or student or account, you may want to create a specific model to be used for this view only. The purpose of such model is just to bring back and forth information from the view to the controller. So again, you cannot connect more than one model, but you can create, and we're not going to be covering this today, but we will cover this. We can create specific models that might be more complex, that may actually have multiple classes within it that will be linked to that particular view. Again, I don't want to overload with too much, but one, it's not possible to do multiple models, but two, you can create specific models for particular views, particular complex views. Okay? And again, we're going to be talking about this at some point. Why you made the list as private list? I've explained that. Data in object-oriented programming, you should keep data secure. You should keep data private, and you expose the data via properties that are public. So that's why I made the list private. Thus, an iNumber will get only the true value of the guest response. Thus, iNumber will get only the true value of the guest response. I'm not sure exactly what the question is about. I can tell you this. The get, okay. Does the number get? Well,
The true and false. The true is yes, I will attend. The false is no, I will not attend. Okay.
I think that the true value, I mean the correct value or the final value, I think it's in that sense. But I know hopefully what we discussed today has addressed that question. If not, ask me 101 and clarify that a little bit more. And again, feel free if you want to clarify that right now. Okay, and we are almost done. Let's see if we can address this one here. What other type of things can we show using viewBag property in the future? Anything. You can use viewBag to transport any type of data. Actually, here's the thing with viewBag. I will open the home controller so you can have a look at that. See, viewBag is an interesting object because I can say viewBag.Ederson. I can just say that viewBag.Ederson equals to whatever I want. And then that .Ederson becomes a property of that object. So it's an object that has dynamic properties. You don't need to declare. Greeting is not declared anywhere. I just use greeting right here and right here. So greeting was not really explicitly declared. I just said dot greeting or dot whatever I want. I can just say that in the controller, and then whatever data gets sent to the viewBag, I can access the viewBag now from the view. So it's a way that you can bypass the model and send information from the controller straight into the view. Do I recommend you to use viewBag too much? Well, if you are using viewBag too much, you may want to consider creating a new model to aggregate all the viewBag data that you want to be transferring around. Bottom line is that use viewBag with dynamic properties to move to send information back and forth from the controller to the views. That's the purpose of the viewBag. Okay, so why we use a number for responses? I think I've covered that. What are other types of HTTP we can use? We can expect, we can use expect, get, and accept, get and post. There are other types, delete, put, but we're not going to be talking about them. Get and post will be just enough for us to be, to do a lot with MVC. Okay, let's do this. Let's go for, there's still one here, but we're not going to cover that. I'll look. If yours, and most likely some of you have not had your questions shown here, if your questions are still valid and you want to address with me, after we come from the break, you can do 101. When we come from the break, what we're going to do next is we're going to go through the other half of the videos. You can do that in groups. You can do that in groups of 3 or 2 people. But I would recommend that even if you're doing in groups, you code your part, your friend codes his or her part as well, because then you can have a copy for each one of you. But again, let's do that in groups if you want to. And let's progress for the rest of the class with the second set of videos. I'll be walking around. I'll be helping you as you go along. If you are stuck right now, I'll be sitting down with you and having a look at the problem that you had there, okay? That's it. 10 minutes. We come back.